What's the worst level of entitlement you've ever seen? Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the Vancher channel. Also, please share your thoughts on this video in the comments. Let's get started. Story 1. My dad got a new coworker who was also new in town, so my parents invited him and his wife over for dinner one night. Dinner included fresh vegetables from my mom's vegetable garden. My mom also gave them some extra tomatoes and zucchini to take home. A few days later, my mom was washing dishes and looked out the window to see the wife crouching in her vegetable garden, stealing as many veggies as she could fit into her bags, including things my mom had plans for and was not planning to give away. She had scaled the fence to get inside. Story 2. Ethan Couch, Wikipedia. At 16, he was on substances and tipsy and was speeding through a neighborhood and then slammed into a group of people, eliminate 4 of them and injuring 9, including paralyzing one of his passengers. His lawyer argued that he had affluenza, meaning he was too rich and spoiled to know any better because his parents gave him everything. So how should he know how to behave? So the idiot judge sentenced him to probation for eliminate 4 people. He then went on to violate his probation, and so when authorities went to arrest him, he was shown drinking in some online video, a clear violation of his extremely lenient probation. His mother took him to a resort in Mexico to hide. When he was 13, he illegally drove to school, and when the principal confronted them about it, his father threatened to buy the school and presumably fire the principal or shut it down. The whole family is full of entitled assholes. Read the article. Answer: this is similar to a young guy in Pune, India, who hit and eliminated 2 people last year while speeding in a Porsche. If I recall correctly, he was forced to do community service in the city department for road safety, then write a 500-word essay on how to improve road safety in the city. I was over there last year for work and heard about it. It's insane what the rich can get away with. Story 3. The Edward Jones financial advisor that parked in handicapped parking every day for 3 years until she finally got a 500 ticket. She tried to force the property owners to pay for it since they knew she was using that space and never said anything to her about moving. Answer: this kind of reminds me of the case of Jonathan Paul Burrows. He was a hedge fund manager in London who underpaid for his train ticket on his commute for years, to the sum of $42,000. He was eventually caught and paid back the money, and then the regulator banned him from working in financial services for life due to his dishonesty. I hope your cheapskate got what they deserve too. Story 4. I worked at a high-end car dealership. A woman by her 50s purchased a car, then called 4 to 5 days later and said the car just stopped on the freeway. We sent a tow truck and discovered she'd run out of gas. She wanted the dealership to waive the tow bill because her salesman failed to tell her she'd have to put fuel in the car. Story 5. I was a chauffeur and I was driving the nanny and 3 children to a destination where the parents will end up. They all had iPads with AirPods. While loading, one of children got upset and tossed his iPad on the ground. The nanny didn't say anything, just picked up the broken iPad and went inside. She came out with a brand new one and handed it to the child. Nothing was said. Story 6. Worked with a woman who was flying with a bunch of our coworkers. She was worried that a connecting flight would get diverted due to weather. Just her, decided to go to the desk and demand that they change her flight. The original flight landed in time, everyone else boarded, and she demanded to get her old seat back on the original flight. It's only been 30 minutes, why can't I have it back? She's retelling me this and acting like she's the victim. She just couldn't comprehend that the flight was full. Her seat was given away to someone on standby, and the flight she changed to would be there in 30 minutes. Story 7. I was placing asphalt at this medical school, and I see this petty young lady is wearing these fancy flip-flops. "Excuse me, miss, you don't want to walk on that asphalt? It's 325 degrees. And with utter contempt, she said, "Excuse you, I'm going to be a doctor." She charges past me, almost get run over by the roller, realizes it's hot, oh wow, and then walked right onto the fresh tack, gooey, sticky tar that binds the layers together, looses a flip-flop, trips and glares at me with scaples for eyes. I had to walk away because it was too funny. Apparently she complained because some big wig came down an hour later. Superintendent told him off. We are not responsible for idiots who ignore warnings not to be stupid. Story 8. My cousin bought his eldest daughter a car as a surprise gift after she passed her driving test. She refused it as it was the wrong color. Answer. I remember seeing a video like this on Reddit, and the explanation given for this behavior is that a teenage girl probably knows very little about cars, and the color was probably the only detail she specified. So the only thing she was expecting was the car to be a certain color, and all of her hopes for the car were centered around it being a specific color, and the vision she had for her life has been ruined. And she's a teenager who doesn't understand economics or her own feelings. As someone who spent his childhood making incredibly detailed Christmas lists, only to be told by my parents that they had gotten me a much better or just the same version of what I had specified, and then being patiently explained to that the things I care about deeply about don't actually matter at all, I sympathize with the daughters in these stories. Story 9. A coworker of mine threw a fit because I won a large glass jar of gummy candies, and she demanded to our director that it needed to either be in the break room for communal snacking or given to her because I don't have a family and don't understand what struggling was. This was over gummy candies. Story 10. Well, currently there's that teenager who violation and strangled 2 girls in Ohio multiple times on video and will be punished by no more than some community service. Edit. Oklahoma, not Ohio. Got my O states, giant football college states mixed up. Answer. Well, Oklahoma is just winning this year. The University of Oklahoma just suspended a graduate instructor that's trans. The reason being she gave a student a 0 on her essay. The student then cried discrimination due to religion. Apparently, the paper did not follow any of the requirements of a basic paper, citing work, using research to bolster the opinion, etc. There is some speculation that it was a setup. Some question why the student took the class at all. Also due to a line in the essay, IYERC, all trans people are demonic in a trans instructor's class. Student's mom is a lawyer who defended Jan's 6 defendants, also a Mom for Liberty member. And Turning Point USA was on the case extremely fast. So yay, Oklahoma, you're looking good this year. Story 11. My neighbor thinks because she owns her home, she and her family and extended family can do whatever they want. First day, they took possession of the house. Her brother did a burnout down our freshly paved street. Instead of apologizing when people were like, WTF, her dad tried to fight the annoyed neighbors instead. It did not improve after that. They cut our internet line when they were planting a cedar hedge. When I went outside to be like, did you just cut my line? He just shrugged and didn't even apologize. Also, her husband's truck is so loud it rumbles my house when he starts it. So are all his friends. One time when I asked them to turn their music down, not off, just down, because it kept waking my baby up, they told us to close our window and proceeded to be louder and honk their horns in the driveway. Should also be noted they also had a baby, which apparently wasn't home that night. They don't do that when their baby is home. I wonder why. Guess only her baby gets to sleep. But according to her, I'm just miserable and don't want her to enjoy her home. Story 12. That twat Ann Sekulas, who was the wife of an American diplomat who ran over and eliminated Harry Dunn after she was driving on the wrong side of the road in England. She then fled back to America and cited she was protected from prosecution of manslaughter under diplomatic immunity. I hope she never has a second's peace and people remind her of it daily. Answer, that's so evil. We had something like that in my Australian state where a premier ran into a kid on a bike. He had a lot of injuries but didn't die. Mandatory breath testing is so common here. Police will stop people randomly in a line and just breath test people for hours. But they didn't breath test him or his wife. And they weren't supposed to be using a government car for personal use, and non-government employees aren't allowed to drive them. But he claimed the wife was driving. They also let them drive the car away with a completely smashed and obscured windscreen and didn't follow other procedures like getting witness statements, measuring tire marks, taking photos, or contacting higher authorities due to it being a serious crash. They blamed the kid when evidence showed the impact meant the car was driving at a higher speed than claimed. Story 13. Sharon Osbourne was on Wilty telling the story of how, during her house fire, she yanked the oxygen mask from one of her employees being seen to by an EMT and screeched, "You work for me? Now get back in there and save more paintings." Story 14. I met a guy while traveling whose dad owns several Marriotts in the States. His family was super loaded and they wanted him to get some life experience and travel experience. So they paid for his trip to basically go anywhere in the world, staying in 5-star hotels in their penthouse suites. He disliked every second of his supposed year-long trip, and he said he bought a 60-inch TV and a PS4 so he could stay in his hotel room to play games instead of sightseeing. He spent the 10 minutes I had interacted with him doing nothing but complain about what a jerk his family is for making him do all of this. When all I could think is, bro, I'm staying in a hostel for €4 a night with 11 other people, trying to stretch this trip as long as I can. So many people would absolutely jump at this kind opportunity to go anywhere in the world and not worry about expenses. But you're just meanie about the whole thing. I met this guy in Rome and he said he didn't even bother trying pizza there because there's no way it would be better than American pizza. pizza. What a waste of oxygen. Story 15. HOAs that don't allow you to park a work vehicle, i.e. a vehicle with words on it, in your own driveway. I guess this is more classism than entitlement, but I will call tradesmen when I need them, but I don't want to have to live next to one, is pretty fudge entitled. Answer, we were renting a house from a private owner, and someone in the neighborhood didn't like my husband parking his tow truck on our own parking pad. By law, came and gave us a warning saying that it is a zoning bylaw of some sort. I don't get it. It's handy having a tow truck around to boost or unlock your vehicle when you need to and not have to wait for hours. He also isn't the type to charge anyone for helping them out, but apparently it bothered someone in the area. They also complained about the previous owners having their camper parked on their own driveway as well. Story 16. When I was a kid, my parents were friends with another couple. They had met through church and eventually hired the husband, his company, to build our house. They were friends ever since. Once the housing market wasn't doing too well, the husband ended up making a prayer request in church. Tearfully, he told everyone they were on the verge of losing their house because he couldn't find enough work to pay the bills. My parents ended up inviting them over for dinner and then afterwards presented them with a check. I have no idea how much it was, but it was enough to save their house. I remember them both sobbing in our kitchen. That was to be the end of it, but the next week we went to church. Things took a turn. People were whispering and staring at us. Eventually, someone took my parents to the side and explained what was going on. This couple had been going up to our mutual friends, asking for their advice. They told everyone that my parents had given them money to save their home, but upon reflection, realized that this amount of money could fund their dream vacation to Las Vegas. They were asking people if they should use the money as intended, or if they should go on their once-in-a-lifetime dream trip and gamble it, accepting, of course, that this would likely end the friendship. I'm not sure if they thought people would be on their side or what, but everyone was pretty appalled. It ended the friendship instantly, and they never spoke again. Even as a kid, it was absurd to me that they would make the choices they did. Story 17. I was a TA. A student showed up 48 hours after an essay was due and handed it to me, asked me to get it to the prof. I was like, this is Thursday TA office hours. This was due Tuesday in class or emailed. She went on a weird ramble about how when she showed up to the prof's office to submit it, he wasn't there, which makes sense because he was in class teaching. She was genuinely upset when I told her a 2-day late submission has to go through the prof, not me. Answer, yeah. The number of times I had students who submitted late or in the wrong way and then got all, what's it matter I submitted it, was annoying as hell. That being said, the ones I didn't mind submitting late were the ones where it was clear you hadn't slept since it was due. So since it was due at midnight, if it came in at like 11, many point the next day, and then I classed that afternoon, they look passing. Well, clearly they earned not getting the 5-point deduction that we were required to give. Story 18. Friend, who was still living at home, got mad at her parents for remodeling their kitchen. They were supposed to use that money to buy her a house. Story 19. Worked at a hotel and this couple was complaining that our bartender wasn't making the drink strong enough. He was following state-issued rules. They said, he's nice, but we just wanted a little more. Well, my boss requested that he get to handle it, so they told their story and ended it with, we can stay anywhere in town. But we stay here because of the location and the staff. Boss kind of nods along and says, well, that's not true. I know for a fact that we banned from the Umstead and are also banned at the downtown Marriott and the full-service Marriott 2 exits down. They look surprised and say, oh, yay. We remember you. You know, they called us last month and said you were fired and requested we come back. Clearly, we should take them up on the offer. Boss nods and says, well, that's not true, but by all means. They then change the story and say, we are unpacked and we paid in cash, so we can't just leave suddenly. Boss asks them to wait a moment, goes to the safe and gets their cash, and then comes back to the desk and hands them a wad of cash and signals the bellman and says, well, here is your money and here is Brian to help you with your things. Then they threw a fit about that. Story 20. The memory that just popped into my head was of the time I saw a well-dressed young woman on the sidewalk next to a restaurant that had some outdoor seating. She was chatting with a couple of other young women. The cafe was pretty fancy, and the tables were already set for dining. This young woman wasn't even a customer. She idly reached over, took the linen napkin from one of the silverware settings, and blew her nose in it. Story 21. This is from a group of people rather than a person. In my area, there is a fox hunt. It is people riding on the back of horses chasing a fox. They ride through farmland if they have permission to do so. My cousin was involved. She is a horse girl and was never bright, but the landowner wants to build something on the land, a new house, and needs permission from the local planning authority. The hunt group hears about it and are upset as the building would disrupt an area where they able to get a good gallop with their horses while hunting on his land he had always given permission. The group gets organized via an email thread and lodge a planning objection to the project. The project gets rejected, and landowner finds out the hunt lodged the objection, and he is pissed. Do not if the project would have gone through without the objection. The hunt are delighted with themselves. They start making a thing to lodge objections for anything that will affect them. When the time for the hunt comes round, the hunt group asks for permission to use his land, and he is in surprisingly says no. The lady in charge of the hunt is shocked by it and is wondering why he is saying no. He bans them from ever using his land again. This happened over 20 years ago, and there is still drama around it. The hunt group's lodging objections got them in trouble with more farmers, and they finally stopped. I dislike the hunt group even though I know people in it. My brother has never given permission for them to use his land since my father died. Story 22. I used to work in credit card fraud and dispute call center. One day I received a call from obviously a wealthy woman as she bought USD 10K jewelry from New York. After returning to Toronto, she realized that she doesn't like the design anymore. So she went back to NY to return it. The jeweler returned her money in full. Now she was asking for associated travel and hotel costs from bank. I couldn't believe my ears when she said that. Oh, how pissed she became when I flatly denied her demand. Story 23. I was on the bus. A guy sneaks in the back door of the bus, and the driver sees him. He starts yelling at the guy to pay the fare or get off the bus. The guy is yelling back at the driver, "You will talk to me with respect. Don't you try to disrespect me." This thief that got caught trying to steal a bus ride actually thought he deserved respect for stealing and delaying all the fare-paying passengers. Apparently, he never learned that respect is earned. I wish I could say I was surprised. Story 24. Buying a cup of tea at the library a few years for 90p, those were the days. The girl serving took my one coin, shut the till, and said my tea would be ready shortly. When I asked for my change, she moodily opened the till again to get it, and as she handed it over said, "Oh yes, 10p? Obvs, it's about the principle, not the amount." Although I was unemployed and pretty broke at the time, no way I was letting her decide to just keep my money like that. Story 25. Was on a very, very small tourist island, and during breakfast I noticed the entire balcony area was roped off. Would sit there for morning whale watching. And there was 2 tables, one with 3 adults and one with nannies, plural, and kids. The kids were ferals, throwing things on the floor, smearing stuff all over the table, and the nanny cleaned up as best they could, but did not discipline the children. Later, we were told that all the boats were on private charter and no one could go out on a boat. But we're divers who prepaid chartered our dives, so told them we would take a boat of our choice if they didn't do better and get us a boat. They found a boat, but we went to a different side of the island, and that day's snorkeling group was canceled. But again, we're divers with our own gear, which means our non-diving family had their own fans and masks, etc. So our people went snorkeling anyway. Found out later that this was a Saudi prince-level family who was upset that we were on their island for their 2-day stay. They didn't even want us in the ocean on the day they were doing their tour and glass-bottom trips. I guess they couldn't have us peasants in the ocean the same time they were. Story 26. I once had a lady try to walk onto the main stage at Coachella 2019 during a set. I politely told her she was not allowed, and she told me she was a VIP and that I didn't know who she was. I told her only people with higher access were able to go on stage, and she asked, "Oh yeah, like who?" And I said, "Like me." Story 27. Kevin Spacey refusing to put a cigarette out in a non-smoking restaurant, resulting in the server getting fired. Story 28. Most recent is a guy who came and set up to paint in my driveway. Brought his easel and paints and canvas and took up residence there very close to the house. Story 29. My mother. My stepdad had been suffering from prostate cancer for 14 years. He went downhill, quickly passed away. My mother had sold her house bought into his, so they owned half each. When he passed, his half was left to his 2 kids. She was furious he didn't leave his half to her, citing that he'd already given his children plenty of money. They'd already lost their mother to cancer too. Plenty more stories like that about her. None of us speak to her. Story 30. I've been with my husband 6 years. His ex is the one who had an affair and wanted a divorce, and she moved in the affair partner as soon as my husband moved out. When she found out about me, she started rumors about my husband, all bad things. Tried to get a restraining for harmful behavior, but it was thrown out when their son said his dad never laid a hand on her. Now she's still harassing him. He works as lead of his department in a grocery store. She's made complaints about him more than once. He's told her politely the item she is asking for is out of stock, and she runs to the manager to tell him he won't get it from the back, but there isn't anything in the back. My husband knows this. She's even complained because my husband reminded her it was senior discount day, just being friendly. They say one more complaint, they're going to tell her to shop elsewhere. Story 31. Had a friend in college whose mother lived 4 hours away from our student housing. Friend refused to do any housework or laundry or take plates, garbage out of her room. Instead, she made her mom drive 4 hours and come clean her room when enough of us complained. Her mom didn't bother to teach her daughter how to do anything herself. Her mom gladly did it, unfortunately. One time, she did ask me to show her how to do laundry because her mom was really sick and couldn't drive over 1 month. But next month was right back to summoning her servant mother. Story 32. American lady in Ireland insisting the subway queue begins from where she stands, collection side, literally insisting. Everyone ignored her. She caught up eventually. Story 33. Man seeks us presidency to avoid prison time for crimes committed and convicted. Destabilizes the globe and enacts mass destruction to avoid personal accountability. Story 34. My husband's brother. He loves tradition and always wanted to wake up in the family home on Christmas morning, even though he and his wife live less than an hour away. My husband and I live in the family home, my in-law's second house, because he is disabled and a wheelchair user. For all intents and purposes, it is our house, and we pay rent. My in-laws still have a room and some things there, and they visit every few months. I sleep in a different room and bed than my husband because of his mobility and space needs. This room used to be my BIL's room. For 2 years at Christmas, he and his wife and toddler would expect to stay for 2 nights and to sleep in his old room, despite it being my current room. The first year they pulled this, my husband was really sick, and we didn't have the energy to be assertive with them. Despite being on caregiver duty for my husband, I slept on the floor. So he got to live in his fantasy and wake up in his whole room at Christmas, but he ruined mine. Answer, hard relate. When my third baby was born, I ended up sleeping on the floor of the living room with him on my chest for 6 weeks, while my now ex-partner slept in our king-size bed with our one-year-old daughter in the bedroom, because he couldn't be bothered to empty the third bedroom of all his junk to turn it into her bedroom. New baby would wake one-yo in the night if we all tried to sleep in the same room. Story 35. The patient who came in today, December 9th in the year of our Lord 2025, and wanted all his dental work done before the end of the year, as if he is the only patient our clinic has. Story 36. A friend I had couldn't comprehend what I meant when I said I couldn't afford something. They looked so baffled and asked why I didn't just go get money for it. Oh, trust fund babies. Story 37. My cousin. After my mother found out that he had spent 100 of her money at the dispensary when he'd been going in for a 5 for 20 deal. When she confronted him about it, he actually said, "It sounds like you want me to say sorry, but I'm not. I'm not to blame because you didn't ask." Story 38. When I was married to my ex-husband, he got incredibly upset that his father hired someone to help run the family business. Their family has a custom farming business where they will do seeding and harvesting for other farms in the area, as well as on their own land. My ex-husband worked for his dad, but rarely actually did anything outside of harvest. A lot of the time, the work was in our literal driveway, fixing combines and other equipment. His dad also lived about 14 of a mile down the road. He just wouldn't go, always had an excuse. When his dad hired help, he flipped his chute, screaming and crying about how that was his job, his dad, blah, blah, blah. I told him that his dad needed someone reliable who would actually help anytime it was needed and not be sick 90 of the time. My ex's response was, "It shouldn't matter. I'm his son." Also, his parents were in their 60s at the time. His dad is over 80 now, survived a brain tumor, and is still working on the farm to support his wife and deadbeat son, and now his son's wife, 2 kids, and 2 stepkids. Story 39. Oh, that would be my ex. She didn't like her college room, so she somehow got her family to get her a music scholars room, which was about 1,000 skeftin and had a grand piano in it. She didn't play the piano. Some talented musician got looked over for this exclusive room. Story 40. In my personal life, my ex-mother-in-law, raging that her ex-husband, divorced for over 20 years, didn't take her on vacation with him and his current fiance because they were married once, so she deserves to go just as much as her. Story 41. Worked with a guy who came to work 10 to 15 minutes late every single day and pretended like it was no big deal. We work in a hospital. You cannot leave your shift until you give report to the next shift. So essentially, he was forcing his coworkers to stay late every single day until he showed up. He was called out on it by his coworkers, and he would just scarf and say, "It's 10 minutes, you guys are overreacting." It took reporting him to the management a dozen times before they finally said something to him. He got written up and was good for a couple of weeks, but then started doing it again. He was written up again. Eventually, I guess he figured it wasn't worth the hassle, and he left to go work in a nursing home. Story 42. Not my client, thank God, but my cleaning company has a monthly customer who literally does nothing. Neither does the child, 12, 14-ish. It takes an hour just to clear the floors of trash or whatever else these bums just drop on the ground. My most patient coworker does their house. I did it once, and that was enough for me. Story 43. The wife of the owner of the business I worked at the Christmas party, she saw an employee check his phone. His girlfriend managed to get him whatever the new iPhone was, and the wife of the business owner hadn't gotten one yet. This woman went off on a rant worthy of billionaire self-entitled brats, not the small business she married into. Highlights: we pay you to work, not to have nice things. You need to give some of your paycheck back if you can afford that. We're the royalty and you're the peasants. You shouldn't have new phones. Story 44. Maybe not the worst, but the most memorable. There was a post on Life Pro Tip Sub. The post was about how if you want to discontinue the service, phone internet, then walk into a store and loudly shout to demand canceling your service. They were able to get an employee to run to them and process the cancellation. Yeah, that. Just a dipshit who's so entitled that their needs are more important than others. Story 45. Gestures to all the mega corporation billionaires. Imagine having enough money to end world hunger, and it's still not enough for you. Story 46. My dad's got some serious narcissistic tendencies. About 6 years ago, his house caught on fire. After everyone and the pets were safely outside, he spent so much time trying to tell the firemen had to do their job that one of them snapped at him. He told my dad that they could just leave and let the house burn. Imagine how much of an irrational control freak someone has to be to make someone as heroic as a fireman snap like that. I know that some people just aren't good in a crisis, but he really is just like that. It really is interesting to see how narcissism can run in families, from both nurture and nature. I've got several stories like that from several different family members and who they're attracted to. Story 47. I manage a contact us email address for a multi-billion market cap company, and we get people emailing all the time saying they have ideas to share with our CEO and asking to set some time, or complaining about something and demanding we reverse our decision because they said so. Yes, well, get your appointment set with the CEO immediately, random stranger. Story 48. I worked at this retirement home, and there's this employee who was always having multiple complaints about her performance, being lazy, not wanting to do this, crying about not getting her way. Nothing. Despite all of this, she's never been fired, written, or anything. In fact, she's received Employee of the Month and received recognition. Story 49. A former friend, L, was attending nursing school in the early 90s. Her classmate, B, came across a used anatomy textbook at the bookstore, something unusual, since nursing students typically held on to theirs. L became upset and insisted that B shouldn't have bought the book, arguing that she deserved it more because she was paying for school entirely on her own without any help from her parents. Story 50. I don't know if these are the absolute worst, but they're the first two things I thought of. One time I was in the TSA line, and there were a few guys in business suits waiting behind me. I think a machine went down or something, because we were standing there for quite some time. One of the guys behind me started getting aggravated and yelled at one of the TSA agents asking what the problem was. "We're first class," I heard him say. He really thought his first class ticket made him more important or something. The second situation was with my mom. She and I were talking about her ex-boyfriend who just passed away. They were together for a couple years at most, and they split probably 3 years before he passed. We then got on the subject of life insurance, and she felt like she was entitled to some of his life insurance. They had been split for years, never married, and never even lived together. Why would he put her on his life insurance? That one still boggles my mind. Story 51. My 17-year-old texting me to choke on a male body part because I wouldn't buy her brand name pants instead of trying Goodwill first. Story 52. Honestly, my old neighbor at my old apartment couldn't park for shoot, had multiple screaming matches in the parking lot with cops, and called people nosy if they watched, smoked plant substance and cigarettes constantly to the point I had to buy multiple air purifiers. We were in a smoke-free building. And the worst was that she'd play music that could be heard from 2 floors away and still shake the walls, floors, furniture for hours. I'm not home every day, but in a year of me living there, I wrote down at least 71 instances where she was playing music loud as fudge for hours at a time. She had the nerve to be mad at me when she got evicted, and I only reached out to the landlord 5 times. She even fudge stole my mail for a week straight after I left her a note to be quieter. After she got evicted, she tried to destroy a bag of our potting soil because it was the only thing she could get her hands on that wasn't being watched by a security camera. Story 53. My ex-best friend asked her dad to sell his home and move into a condo, which he does not want to do, so that she could take the money and buy her first home. She has multiple times inherited money from family passing away and mismanaged that, so she asked her retired dad to fund her home. He say hell to the no and still has his house. Story 54. Had a dude in one of my college courses not do work all year long. In all of his classes, gets an F after finals and then raises a stink to the dean demanding a chance to do all the work he didn't do all semester. And I'm like, bro, it was finals. WTF. How do you fudge up that hard with that much notice? Story 55. Not the worst, but just off the top of my head, I would have been about 16 working in my local restaurant, takeaway. One of the customers had some sort of diabetic attack. I'm so sorry to anyone with diabetes, I don't know the terminology, and he was losing consciousness at the table. I had called an ambulance and we were trying to open the doors and take him out in the chair so the ambulance could get him in and take him away. Two older people came up to me, I'm guessing in their 40s, completely ignored the unconscious guy we were trying to wrangle out and talked over the top of everyone asking if we had a table for two. I was absolutely gobsmacked and admittedly snapped, I'm a little busy at the moment. They complained to the owner and he was like, you saw there was a medical emergency and you couldn't wait 5 minutes? Story 56. I have a client who can drive me nuts with entitlement. She's always sending people away and then expecting them to come back on her whim, not understanding that they're not just sitting around waiting for her to give them the green light. We are actually at the mercy of their schedule. They don't care about ours. For instance, I set a plumber up to install something. It was going to take 4 hours to do. I set it for 8 a.m. She wanted me to call back and reschedule him for 4 p.m. so he and his crew would be working into the evening. He, of course, refused. Or we had a furniture delivery show up earlier than expected. They hadn't called any of us to schedule, which did suck. She expected them to leave and come back the next day to drop it off when she had more time to deal with it. This was some out-of-state freight hauler. They weren't going to go, just get a hotel room for the night and twiddle their thumbs. That's not how any of this works. You got to take it when it comes. Story 57. State Patrol officer bought hard liquor for high school daughter when she went to state tournament as a cheerleader. Party got loud, hotel got angry, and wasn't impressed with daddy as LEO. Eventually, he lost his job as this was not one-off incident. Laws just didn't apply to him. Story 58. Parents traveling with young kids often assume other passengers should move so they can sit together. I'm not handing over the premium seat I paid for to sit in a cramped economy spot instead. Story 59. I caught my ex trying to steal from me by impersonating me. Instead of offering a defense or even an excuse, she just doubled down and asked me to give her what she wanted. Story 60. Basically, anyone featured in those body cam video channels. So many people insisting they did nothing wrong and can't be arrested after doing super illegal dangerous shoot in full view of cameras law enforcement. Story 61. Donald Trump, and I'm not even being political, he thinks the idea of affordability is a hoax. My favorite, though, is when he blamed the California fires on residents not being able to use their fire sprinklers because of a water shortage. The dumbass doesn't realize that homes almost never have a sprinkler system because he's a billionaire that's lived his entire adult life in hotels. Story 62. People who claimed to have heart attack symptoms just to get moved to the top of the queue in the walk-in medical facility I used to work in. Answer. I actually thought I was having a heart attack. Working on a Saturday to catch up, just me and another guy in the building. In retrospect, I think I tweaked a muscle in my chest screwing around with the photocopier. Long story short, pain in my chest. Dr. Google says, go to the hospital. So I go tell the other guy in the building, can he drive me to the hospital? Slowest fudge driver in the world. Phone my wife to tell her what is going on. I am in a total meltdown. Go to the front desk, tell them I think I am having a heart attack. They say keep going to emerge, 100 feet away. By the time I get there, 30 seconds, they are ready for me, wheelchair, bold pressure, blood sample to check for the enzyme, and my blood pressure is through the roof, like 240 over 170, and I am hyperventilating. My wife shows up and we wait and watch my blood pressure monitor. Enzyme comes back negative. I'm not dying, but holy shoot, I had absolutely convinced myself I was. Blood pressure starts dropping, but protocol dictates I have to stay for 8 hours and get second enzyme test to make sure. Wife says, call me when you can go home. I got other stuff to do. I was so embarrassed, but staff made me feel better saying I did the right thing. Best part of the whole story, besides me living. Did not cost me anything. Top-notch care. I live in Canada. This is the way medical care should be. Story 63. just been fired from a job a few months ago. So basically, me and my partner, also working at the same company, did a technician course for some work equipment. The company paid the course, around 100 only, without discussing it with us, and we took it as a nice gesture. Well, the nice gesture made our boss think he can now text us 2:47 asking us to come in unpaid after our 6:12 workday. He then consequently would get upset if we wouldn't then proceed to come to the office at 11 p.m. We kind of tolerated it due to a, in general, incredibly toxic work environment and him destroying our confidence through mean speeches. After about a year, I had enough, especially seeing how my partner, but also other staff, was treated. I had a supervisor role at the time and was a little bit less in the cannon fire than the rest of the team. We approached him after a team meeting about being paid for the extra work, and he completely lost it. Asked me for passwords the next day and fired me 3 weeks later for being negative. Story 64. My son, who's literally in the middle of his punishment for poor behavior, and he had the audacity to ask me what we're getting him for Christmas this year. Story 65. Whenever I see some dipshit complaining that my parents are wasting my inheritance money, I get a little bit angry. Story 66. I'm sure there's been worse, but it happened directly to me, and I remember it vividly. In university, I had a part-time job in the cafeteria cooking and serving students from the residences. A lot of rich kids at this school. I had a girl tell me to go to that fridge, she pointed, and get me some fresh tomatoes from a new container of sliced tomatoes. We already had tomatoes on display with other available condiments, but those ones weren't good enough, evidently. I remember I kind of cackled when she said it because I was so shocked by it. I thought she was joking. She wasn't, and complained to the manager about my attitude. Fortunately, I was a decent employee and had a good relationship with the other staff and manager, so nothing came of it. I still remember that from time to time, and it's been nearly 20 years. Story 67. She was eating, just eating, and he ate his share and grabbed what she was eating out of her mouth and ate that too. Worst incidents of entitlement ever. Yes, they are also happen to be true story, my pups. Story 68. The worst form of entitlement isn't acting like you're owed or are deserving of a thing, but rather thinking that someone else isn't. Story 69. A school nurse tried to steal confidential documents about my brother from my dad, and she acted surprised when he told her she couldn't have them. Story 70. The customer at Blockbuster who was angry because she forgot to take a movie back when she went to Florida for vacation and complained that the store should have come and picked it up for her. Story 71. My mom used to work at a hotel near Fernbragg, NC, a long time ago, and one morning this lady calls about some noise she's hearing. My mom says, "Oh, that's just the Army doing artillery tests. It'll be over in an hour or two." And the woman actually says to her, "Well, can't you call somebody and get it to stop? I'm trying to sleep." Story 72. My younger sister wanted my nose and begged for it. When she was 17, suddenly it didn't fit her face, and she had a second rhinoplasty. I emancipated myself at 16 the year she had her first. My family was poor, BTW. Story 73. Trump renaming the Department of Defense to the Department of War and think he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. Story 74. Someone literally yelling at a waiter because their water was too cold, like, chill. It's literally water lull. Story 75. General managers bringing their own people like boyfriend and friends. Sometimes they don't know what they're doing and feel they can do anything because they know related to the general manager. Story 76. Worked with a paramedic until I transitioned to a corporate role with the ambulance service. Not long after, the paramedic that I worked with wanted to do a transfer with someone else. I didn't have consent from the other person. However, this particular paramedic responded with, "I don't care about consent," forced the other paramedic to do the transfer with me before I force him to do it. I don't need his consent. Story 77. All the men who are choosing fascism over equality because they feel entitled to women's bodies and their reproductive, domestic, and care labor. Story 78. Here's an old comment I made on a post on our Scotland years ago. We were helping Marshall at a local event held in a 16th century castle grounds, and an American family turned up. We pointed them in the direction of the car park, but they wanted to visit the castle. "I'm sorry the castle isn't open to the public," I explained. "What's going on here then?" the father asked, gesturing at the crowded field and busy car park. "The estate is holding a fair today. You're all welcome to come in. Admission is by donation to a local charity." "No, you don't understand. We've traveled all the way from I've forgotten where, USA, to come here today because we are part of the I've forgotten which name that they claimed, clan, and this is our ancestral home. We've literally driven here straight from the airport, about a 3-hour drive. I didn't expect to be apprehended at the gate. Phone the castle now. So you traveled halfway across the world to visit someone's house and expected a royal welcome because someone with the same name as you lived here 500 years ago? Get Tay. I assume they drove straight back to the airport. I felt bad for the kids, though, because they would have enjoyed the fair after all the traveling. And if they'd been nice to me, I would have given them a tour of the castle grounds. I couldn't have let them in, though, because contrary to American belief, most castles are actually people's houses, and they don't want folk just waltzing in. A relatively small castle built in the 16th century. The 16th century with ornamental towers and all that shoot, but not a defensive medieval castle or anything. Basically a stately home. Story 79. After my aunt died, her employer, who was very wealthy, asked me if he could have her guitars. She was alive and nanny, so he had access to all her stuff. He also illegally went into her storage unit, even though I told him not to, and also threw out and stole some things. Literally 2 days after she died. When I freaked out on him, he told me word for word, "You're ruining everything." I still have his emails because he was so fudge crazy, and I started having bad panic attacks and had to get therapy and take Klonopin for a while after. He also owed her money and went through all her documents because he thought he was the beneficiary to the life insurance policy he told her to get. There's so much more to what a jerk that guy is. He is a music producer and owns a construction cement company or something. Story 80. A guy I lived with, he moved into my house, never paid anything towards the purchase of the house or the mortgage. His whole contribution to shared expenses was paying a bill that averaged $100 a month. He had a lot of debt, and I was supporting him so he could pay it off. He cheated on me, and when I told him to move out, he said he wasn't going to, then said that I owed him half of the equity in the house because he had sweat equity. He had helped with a couple projects, things we worked on together. When he was moving out, I was helping him carry something, and he called me effing CNT. I set down my end, he asked what I thought I was doing, and I told him I wasn't going to tolerate that, and he had 24 hours to be 100 moved out. I also told him that if I found as much as a scratch on anything I owned or the house, that the police would pay him a visit. Story 81. My stepmother has a horrendous niece who has never worked a day in her life. She's about 35. Her grandfather was dying, and the family is mega rich. As part of Rich People's Shoot, they started transferring various properties and bits of wealth around to manage estate taxes and so on. The family vacation property, built by the grandfather and maintained by a trust, where everyone spends holidays together, is put into her name to avoid triggering a tax event upon his passing. She really thought it meant it was her house. She started flipping her shoot when people didn't behave in ways she liked, including her parents, dying grandfather, his eventual widow, her parents' guests, children, everyone. This is my fudge house. Do you think you can just show up whenever you like? You need to show me more respect, etc., etc. Just wild behavior. Story 82. After watching Sean Combs' The Reckoning, I'm pretty sure that level of entitlement is the worst I've seen. Ito, adding details, getting away with physical, emotional intimacy, harmful behavior, countless times, drugging people, not paying people, injecting himself into artist songs, videos, presumably having people eliminated more. Story 83. Bluetooth speaker or cell phone conversation on public transit, especially if it's the first train in the morning. Story 84. My sister had two friends that wanted to found a garden business, like doing garden work for people. We wanted to give them a chance, and my mother engaged them for her garden. They charged us $800 for mowing the lawn and weeding with the oldest equipment you can imagine, and even left us the remaining grass to rot because their car wasn't even big enough to take it away. They didn't do more and pretended like they were some kind of gods and saviors. Before, they also gave us a lot more promises than they actually later did, but the price was still the same. But we didn't say anything as we wanted to be nice and also didn't know better. We even tipped them €200 and they didn't even say anything. I mean, there could have been the possibility that we accidentally put too much money in the envelope. Keep in mind that they told us if we got anything to criticize, we should totally feel free to speak out. Fast forward a bit later, my mother wanted them to fix a wall in her garden too. Charged $700 for that, and they came more and more irregularly. To this day, they haven't finished. Also, again, they left us the trash they made. They also always had excuses why they couldn't keep going. 2 total scams. After months passing by, we had enough and decided to step out of that contract. We first asked them when they'd finished the work because, as I said, it had been months. I swear I have never seen anyone freak out this much over such a question. He started insulting my sister and my mother and pretended like we would stress him out all over a simple question. We asked once more as we didn't want to lose our money and he freaked out even more when we said that we will engage someone else and want to have per money back. I have never seen a 37-year-old man acting like a 7-year-old. He won't last long with that business if he reacts like this to every costume or complaint. He also said that he wants to sue us for giving out his number. My sister already had it, and I copied it from a group chat we once were in. As ridiculous as duck. I assume he ran out of the money we gave him and spent it for, you know what? We also found used cigarettes in our garden, and now he can't buy his equipment anymore. Worst mistake of my life. But I won't stop until I get my money back or he gets the rest of the work done. So much for feel free to criticize when you aren't happy with our work. Story 85. My sister, eating my mom's entire biscuit tin in 3 days, then claiming she just wouldn't eat when gently confronted. Never giving change to anyone unless prompted, no matter how much it is. Doesn't always say please or thank you. Leaves messes alone for hours until she realizes we won't clean it for her. Eating more than her portion of food without the slightest concern for others. Refusing to take any responsibility and getting extremely defensive when confronted about her actions. I'm seriously liking her less and less as a person. Story 86. Someone jumped the queue at the airport today right in front of my mate at an e-gate. Funny though, because he got stuck in the gate and my mate cleared before him after using one next to it. Story 87. There was a real estate agent in town who took a couple to view a house for sale. While doing the showing, the potential buyers noticed a fruit tree. They asked if they could have some of the real estate agent, who agreed. They picked the tree clean and left. Just straight up stole all the fruit from someone's tree. Story 88. A classmate back in high school tried to cut the line by driving through a patch of grass and sunk her car in the fresh mud. The school promptly towed her chute after she abandoned it to get a ride with a friend, and her dad showed up to the school with cops and lawyers to get them to pay back the impound and not do it again. Papa was a big wig business mogul and must have scared the principal good to get that response. She ended up tipsy driving and totaling her BMW and a stationary car a week later. Her dad got her a truck for safety reasons. 0 lessons learned. Story 89. An entire generation of rural farmers, meat packers, coal miners, and other shrinking industry workers demand that the country save their jobs in perpetuity. Story 90. Worst level? No, but I dislike when gym goers grab dumbbells and work out at front of rack and not caring about other walking through. They know exactly what they're doing, but they just don't care. You can see it in their arrogant face. Story 91. Last year, my teenage cousin made my grandparents spend $10K on a party last October when her birthday is in December and had the darn audacity to get mad when one of her friends came to the party, saw everything and went, "That's it?" My cousin got mad at my grandma because what her friend said. As if my grandma, who used her savings, she's 78 and has health issues and can't work. She sets Social Security, but lately she's been having to use her savings, which used to be rare, to throw this little brat a sweet 16 party. Got a bunch of those photo booth things. Got a fudge DJ, all the stupid napkins and plates with her face on them. Paid for a photography session that cost $1K and had her ugly behind framed in the club they rented out. My grandma even paid to have caterers and paid a lot that she won't say for some woman to make authentic horchata. How is it authentic? Because it was made by some woman on Instagram. We tried to tell her get her very best friends together and pay a little bit to go somewhere out of town. No. All her friends had a quinceañera, and since she missed her chance, she's getting a sweet 16. And she says she didn't even enjoy it because it wasn't what she wanted, it was what my grandma wanted. Grandma didn't want any of it. That ungrateful, entitled little brat. I don't know why my grandma doesn't talk to her the way she talked to me and my sisters when we were growing up. She said a lot of hurtful stuff that we took because that's just how grandma is. But we can't say boo to that entitled little brat who treats everyone like they're beneath her. Story 92. The guy who called me to complain that the house proposed to be built next door to him would be too small and would bring down his property value. Did I know who he was? I gave zero shoot. I work for the government. That house could be 401 square feet and be considered a dwelling for all I care, and it'd be approved. Story 93. My ex-wife felt that my paychecks should all go to a joint bank account for family expenses, but any money she earns should go to her own account for her own use. Story 94. A housemate of mine didn't want to deal with their cat's dirty litter box being in their room, so they put it in the middle of the entryway to the kitchen and went to bed. Story 95. Maybe not the worst period, but maybe one of the most pathetic. A former friend thought she was entitled to my husband because she was going through a substances-induced midlife crisis intimacy reawakening, and she thought my husband would be good to talk to about it for intimacy gratification. The thing is, she has a partner of like 10 years, and they are engaged. My husband was supposed to walk her down the aisle since her family doesn't talk to her, but she fudge blew that since she couldn't own her hurtful actions against my husband and I. Story 96. I saw someone that asking them for the discount, a free item, and sort of VIP treatment, and their only reason was, I just feel I deserve it. Some people really live in a delusion. Story 97. The one that sticks out in my mind the most is the time my mother managed to make my father's passing several years earlier and my aunt's then recent passing, mother's sister, about herself in one sentence. She was offended she didn't get a personal call from that aunt's daughter. Despite that cousin keeping all of us up to date on Facebook during her hospitalization and following passing, the same daughter that was grieving her mother, who had already lost her father more than a decade prior. She then went on to say it was just like finding out my dad died on Facebook and how hurt we both were, except that's a complete fabrication. I got the call right after he passed from my sister's husband at the time. We knew it was coming. He'd been battling cancer, so it wasn't a shock. I could hear my sister wailing in the background, and it was a few years before I could listen to my favorite Misfits song, as that was what I used for my ringtone. As I was living with her at the time, I immediately went to her room and told her right then. She still doubled down, still insisting she had been personally wronged by both incidents. Story 98. Our uni course had the opportunity to go study abroad for a year. You could apply to study at the universities we had relationships with, and they would treat it the same as a regular application to study there full-time. You either made the cut during the application process or you didn't. One girl was so furious she didn't get into her dream study abroad university in New York that she got her parents to phone the principal of our university and the head of the New York University to demand she got in. There was apparently some payment made too. She got to go. Story 99. I am a funeral director. We once had a family who wanted their service on a specific day. We already had one scheduled for that date and time. They asked, can't you just call and make them move it? Absolutely not. Story 100. Worked for a camp that offered financial aid. We'd see folks below the poverty line meekly asking for $200, and they'd try to find a way to pay it off over time, and then have other folks complain that if we didn't give them $5K in aid, they wouldn't be able to afford 3 other camps, music lessons, and a family vacation overseas while renovations are done to their second home this summer. Fortunately, management supported us when we had offered to pay everything except $100 for family 1 and give family 2 a token $50 as a fudge you. Story 101. American tourists getting cunty because at the hotels I worked, so was the hotel or the respective towns we were located in, did not do anything to celebrate the American 4th of July Independence Day. First time it happened and I thought it was fluke, then it happened again, and then even when I worked in a different country, it happened again. The hotels varied in price point, so then did the socioeconomic group target demographic. And it was 2 totally different countries in terms of culture, New Zealand, Fiji, so I'm not sure if it was entitlement or just plain ignorance, but it was as funny and confusing. Story 102. Few years ago, guy I was dating was ordering me Chinese food via his phone, and my grandma got mad because I didn't order anything for her, mind you. It was his card that he was using to place the order. Lol. Story 103. Sighted people. As a blind person, I cannot explain the rage I feel when someone knocks into me because they aren't paying attention. Story 104. My friend's niece told her parents they were robbing her of the college experience she deserved by trying to talk her into a local state school. I think they caved, though. Story 105. Most any of my friends' wives during their divorces, it was unreal, like a switch flips and all of a sudden, these do-nothings are demanding everything in this dude's life. Wild. Story 106. The worst entitlement I've ever seen is happening right now in the West, particularly amongst the emerging adult population who grow up in a world engineered to remove hardship, accountability, and zero to sweet funk all consequences. They weren't shaped by economic collapse, war, famine, or genuine scarcity. Instead, they are raised in systems that prioritize emotional comfort over resilience. Schools rewards participation instead of one winner takes the prize. Parents shields children from failure. and digital culture delivered instant gratification without effort, whilst bullying others without real-world consequences. As a result, many now expect outcomes without input, recognition by turning up, and protection from the consequences of their own decisions. It's not their fault style. They are conditioned into entitlement by institutions terrified of laying consequences at their feet or setting real-world standards. The outcome is real: confusion between inconvenience and oppression, personal feelings elevated above objective reality, and an inability to withstand friction of any kind without turning it into a personal insult or a passive aggression war. And everything is at their fingertips without much effort. Welcome to the rise of mental illness and superimposed personalities coupled with what my feel must be true. The level of entitlement running through the psychological profiles of today's generation is evidently played out in every workforce and screen near you. You just have to be awake to see the cost associated. Story 107. Trump voting farmers who want to destroy the economy and then take massive welfare checks from the government. Story 108. My alcoholic office manager parked her ancient Honda in an EV-only spot, left it for an hour, then had the gall to complain that somebody smeared mayonnaise all over it. There were other non-EV-only spots available, but she would have had to walk an extra 20 feet. She genuinely believes that she did nothing wrong. Story 109. Hearing a coworker say, and I'm not even fudge exaggerating, women should serve men, and then harping on about how men should be the ones out there making money and coming home to a wife that's cleaned and got a meal ready. We live in a first world country, modern as fudge. This guy was 21 or so at the time, raised by his mother, and grew up with his sister. I've never wanted to hit someone more in my life. You were raised by women, you cunt. Story 110. Trump, a billionaire that expects daily praise, a Nobel Peace Prize, stole a FIFA trophy, has laundered and outright bamboozled hundreds of millions, if not billions of taxpayers' money into his accounts because he's earned it, demands blind, unwavering loyalty, and gives nothing in return. Story 111. I'm a therapist and have experience working with treating cluster BPDs. At the early stages of treatment, it can absolutely unimaginable how much entitlement exists. Story 112. Overheard a manager at work complaining about people not shopping on her Amazon list for gifts. Imagine working minimum wage for like 3 to 4 hours of your day to get someone a gift, and they say something like this. Story 113. I pay monthly about a small entry-level paycheck in taxes, mortgage, car service, and food. IT job has been mostly stable for me. Then my dumbass brother that landed into bankruptcy and even took out my parents' home in the process goes on and on ranting about social programs and this and that while living in my house with my parents that I had to move into and don't even pay rent. Story 114. Probably some of our patients who call or walk up and expect us to pull the providers out of an exam room with another patient to do stuff for them. Story 115. Nepotism is worst kind of entitlement. Just because you are a star kid, you become eligible for getting new role in movies. Story 116. I heard a story where Stephen Miller dumped his high school lunch trash on the cafeteria floor and proclaimed that there was someone whose job it was to throw it away. Story 117. The admin employee who complained that the $10,000 Christmas bonus is too little compared to real estate agents who worked at the same company. Story 118. My office building is old and didn't have an accessible entrance. The building manager was too cheap to put one in. Granted, he is wheelchair bound himself. He had to call someone on his office staff to let him in every time he wanted to come in. Story 119. I had a boss try to make a coworker sell their car because it was nicer than his own, and that didn't look right. Story 120. For one, you should address these questions to me by name. Secondly, why would I even answer your question if you haven't even put my name in there? Don't you know who I am? Have you done no research? How do you expect to be taken seriously like this? I'm not answering. I won't. I find your question rude and ignorant. It amounts to a personal attack on me, and it shows how small you are. Consider yourself lucky I don't report you to my uncle, who knows the man that runs the company, that dog walks for the people who live beside the good friends of the people who regularly play tennis with a close friend, or of the people that own the company that supplies Reddit HQ with clean towels and towel cleaning services. It's just one call from me, pal, and then maybe a couple weeks for the grapevine to get the message. Then, pal, no towel service until you are removed from the website. Entitlement is a word, false word used by people who aren't sophisticated. If you have gone this far, yes, this is satire. Story 121. I had floated to work in the ED. We were literally in the middle of coding someone when another patient's husband came out and demanded that we got her another pillow immediately. Story 122. I was at the shops and an old lady pushed a shopping trolley at me as she got into her car. Obviously thought I was the shopping trolley attendant when I was just out going to the shops. No thank you, or are you the attendant? Just shoves the trolley at me like it's my problem. Story 123. I hope every one of these is internet bullshit. Otherwise, I'd like to get off the planet at the next stop, please. Story 124. My retail store's assistant manager has done absolutely jack all since she took the position nearly half a year ago. And when confronted by the new store manager over her performance, she blew up at them and proceeded to spew profanity on the sales floor before quitting on the spot. Immediately afterwards, she went crying to HR saying the store manager was harassing her and wants them fired while demanding to come back and get her old position back. Story 125. My sister moved herself into my mom's house with the plan that the house belongs to her when my mom passes. She doesn't want the house. She just doesn't want to have to spilt the money with my other sister and I so she can buy another house somewhere else. Story 126. When I brought the ring to propose to my now wife, I spent quite a bit, but had saved up for a long time. While I was waiting for them to do up the paperwork, etc., they brought over a plate of cookies and some water for my friend and I, my friend having come to support me. The jeweler was in a mall in a corner spot and had an open front, meaning a lot of people cut through to cut the corner. Cue middle-aged lady walking past, seeing a plate of cookies that are clearly for us, backtracks, takes a few, and walks off. Not even a customer. That meanie ate my cookies. Story 127. Occupy Wall Street protesters were watched by wealthy onlookers on a restaurant balcony who were sipping drinks, laughing, and taking pictures as the group marched. Story 128. I worked in VI for Jason Aldean's tour. I wasn't allowed to see him, so I had to keep hiding when he came around. Story 129. I sell car parts. 89 of my customers are totally nice people. One guy called up and ordered some indicator lenses, which he urgently needed. I told him that they weren't in stock, but I'd order some in. When my wife got home, she found him removing the indicator lenses from an old car I had parked in the driveway. Story 130. I'm a working mom. School holidays always stressed me out, BC. I needed to find childcare for a week. I ran into another mom after a break and asked how her President's Week was. She said they'd gone to Florida, but it wasn't Aruba, where they usually go. I was like, gee, I was commuting and working and stressed out all week. Entitled jerk. Story 131. My grandparents, both roughly 80, hosted Thanksgiving, and my grandmother's son, 50-ish, from a previous marriage, asked them to clean their driveway so he could drive his RV to their house and not worry about tracking in dirt. They live on a dirt road but have a basically pristine paved driveway, but he really expected them to go out and hose and scrub it so he wouldn't have to step on dirt. He also insisted on bringing his dogs. They're both annoying little assholes who harassed my grandparents' dogs constantly, and he paid them absolutely no mind. What really pissed everyone off is their psycho little idiot ran around biting every kid there. First his daughter, and he did nothing, then his son did nothing, then the rest. And finally we were like, do something about your dog before I do. And he stormed off to his RV with his dogs and never came back to have dinner with the family. This man is over 50. Could he be any more of a baby? Story 132. Huge no U-turn sign at elementary school drop-off street. Same entitled woman every morning does a 8-point U-turn in her Cadillac versus legally turning around at the roundabout ahead. Line of cars always waiting and staring her down. Probably saves her 1 second each day. Bound to hit someone soon. Story 133. I grew up poor, struggled most of my life working to make it. I finally opened my own business and developed everything from research through the years. My wife and I sacrificed having a wedding to save money and establish our company, and we even slept on the floor of our business for a year because we couldn't afford living space. After a while, we settled and grew big. I had 2 employees who decided they want to date. I had no problem with it. Just keep drama out of work. They have been professional up until this point. Well, they did not keep it professional and started to come in hungover, late, and missing deadlines. I had a talk with them respectfully, but they decided I was being unfair for asking them to do the bare minimum of their job. They quit the company, and that is fine, their choice to make, but also decided it was a good idea to steal private information from our company database. Wholly illegal. They used their parents' money to establish their own business, not even 200 meters down the road, and started trying to steal our clients by going through the stolen data. They were so confident that our clients flocked to them. Wrong! It was pretty clear what they were trying to do. The whole area knew pretty fast what was going on before we even commented, We actually kept quiet, and the rumor spread not to do business with them. They also had signed an NDA, so I called up a lawyer of one of the larger law firms, sent them a cease and desist letter. Them being the smart jerk entitled to holes they were, argued with the lawyer and self-incriminated themselves through a reactionary response in questioning, revealing they in fact stole the data and was using it. Not only that, they were constantly shooting themselves in the foot on social media, which made them look really guilty, and they started blocking everyone asking about what happened. They still think they are the victim and in the right. An employee told me they were actually trying to invite people at our company for social gathering diners just to be friends after they had quit, but instead they constantly bad-mouthing us, making it seem like I was some kind of monster of a boss and people should join them instead. I was glad to hear that my employee stood up and said I was being a fair boss. Story 134. Danny Francis. Eliminate one young man out riding his bike and seriously injured another, left him screaming in a ditch to try and hide the fact that he'd been drinking. Complete waste of oxygen. That's it for this video. Don't forget to support Vancher and my second channel, Vanchoose. See you soon.